Hello everyone and welcome to another video. We are very privileged today because we're going to get a little bit of time talking with Fredrik Wahler, who is the designer for the Rule the Waves game series. And if you haven't heard of those, well, you probably haven't been paying too much attention to the channel. But for those of you who don't know, it's one of the most accurate naval wargaming simulators that you can get on PC or any number of other platforms, I think. Currently in its Rule the Waves 3 iteration. So Rule the Waves 1 started off with kind of pre-dreadnoughts to dreadnoughts. Then you've got Rule the Waves 2 with various improvements. Rule the Waves 3 now we've got carriers and missiles if you want to go that far down the spectrum of things. And it's now planning to come up with some new DLC as well. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat about that and Rule the Waves 3 generally. So I guess to start things off, to help everyone understand what's going on, what was the sort of the grand overall ambition creating the Rule the Waves series in the first place?
Oh, I made the game I always wanted to play myself. It's about fleet management. You build your own ships. You design them. If you want to design big battleships, you can specify the armor, the guns, and all of that. Of course, within the limitations of your current technology. You can also choose, do I want a big battle fleet? Do I want a fleet of raiding armored cruisers and all of that those choices. And also realistic time constraints. It takes about 3 years to build a major warship at least. So I wanted to simulate all of that. And so that's the game I made.
And it's one of the interesting things is that it's a valid choice to play smaller powers. So you can play Great Britain if you want to start off with a massive fleet, but you can also play Italy or Greece or Russia,
yes,
with all the challenges that come with having multiple areas to cover with a large fleet. So it's not just a case of refighting World War I or World War II. You can kind of set your own little naval history theme going. If you want a challenge, start with a smaller fleet or start with a mid-sized fleet.
Yes, exactly. So actually, personally, I think it's more fun to play like Italy or France or a medium or smaller nation. You can not play Greece actually, or unless there is a mod, but you can play Spain, which is kind of a challenge. It's probably the most difficult nation to play because you both have a poor economy at this time and you have worldwide obligations and colonies that you need to protect. So yeah. Spain is definitely difficult mode.
Yeah, and when we were talking, because we're recording this, if in case people are interested, just after the conference that we had. So you mentioned there that one of the key things that differentiates it, at least if you're playing at the more usual difficulty settings, is even when you're playing a tabletop war game, people are used to the kind of omniscient command and control. You might have a fleet of dozens of ships and you control everything. Whereas in Rule the Waves, you're on your flagship, but if you have other formations nearby, you have to tell them what to do, but they may or may not actually do what you want. And you can't say, I want you to go exactly here. It's kind of like, enemy is there, attack, or I don't know what's ahead of me, scout, and they'll do it themselves like an actual real commander would do.
Yes, exactly. So you assign roles to your subordinate divisions. You can tell, for example, light cruisers will usually be scouting, so they will spread out in front of your main fleet, while your battle squadrons will either be the flagship themselves, or you have a core role for them, which means they will follow on in your line of battle. So, but within that, they will be governed by the AI, the exact same AI that is running the enemy, by the way.
Yeah. So in what Rule the Waves 1 and 2, as we said, you're kind of fighting gun actions with various improved features, and as you develop your technology, you're going from the kind of the close range fights where maybe the battleships are flinging as many torpedoes at each other as main guns, to World War II, where you've got super dreadnoughts, with 16, 18-inch guns and things like this. But then in Rule the Waves 3, we've seen the introduction of the aircraft carriers. And if you, as I said earlier, if you take it that far, the missile age, or the early missile age at least, how difficult was it to make that change in terms of game design, going from a purely surface gun-based strategy to, balancing and enabling carriers realistically and then missiles?
Oh, that was a challenge. It has both the AI and also the mechanics of the game, and you have to try to make carrier battles interesting. Yes, I would admit that the Rule the Waves is probably still better at the gun age, and it does a decent job of the aircraft carrier age. And now we have missiles, and the problem there, of course, is that we don't really have any examples of large-scale missile naval engagements. So it's hard to research, and also it's more of a challenge for formations and how to deploy fleets, because we just don't know. Do you want to deploy your fleet close together to maximize point defense or close range defense, or do you want to spread out your fleet to minimize your targets? We don't really know what is the valid or best approach there. So we are more into uncharted waters, to say.
Yeah, and I must admit, it is actually quite interesting, because obviously when you're playing it, as obviously being a player of the game, you see very often we kind of have the hindsight narrative of the carrier comes along and displaces the battleship because of what happened in World War II. But when you're actually playing the game and you've got this sort of realistic start of the carrier age, where you can get small and slow carriers, you can maybe convert some ships, and honestly their total air capacity and their striking power really isn't that much. It is really interesting in that if you then try and launch a war in, say, roughly the late 20s, early 30s, and you go in with this post-World War II mindset of the carrier is supreme, you don't accomplish all that much, and your carriers get blown out of the water, which I thought was really interesting, both in terms of understanding the challenges of those early carrier designers, but also in terms of, again, appreciating the realism, as opposed to some war games where you can just show up with a carrier and it's essentially an I win button. But as we said again at the start, there is some DLC coming. So now Rule the Waves 3 is kind of, it's been out for a little while. What are we going to be seeing with this new DLC?
There will be mainly two themes. It's the first one is quick battles, where you can specify any two navies at any dates, even on different dates, if you want to try that, if you want to try a final countdown sort of scenario. And the program will generate those fleet, and then you can select your force or let the computer automatically select for you or the enemy, and then you can fight a quick battle against any navy at any date with ships designed by the computer, the auto ship designer. So that is one part of it. The other part is historical battles. So we are doing a number of historical battle scenarios. So we will have the Battle of the River Plate. We will have Operation Rheinübung, the Bismarck breakout. We will have Second Battle of Guadalcanal, the Battle of East Solomons for carriers. Those are the main ones I can remember right off. And Yellow Sea, yes, the pre-dreadnought battle.
So if people want to think, oh, what if at this battle they had done this instead, they can now use Rule the Waves to go, oh, okay, maybe this would have happened. And then, of course, because obviously these things are alternate histories at that point, if you want to run it again and again and again to see how likely is it that this outcome would happen, you can do that as well. And I suppose with the quick battles, that allows people to get more of an idea of how to do command and control and how things would fare in the game. So that's a bit of an easier lead-in for people who perhaps are, if they're looking at it from the blank from start, they can go, okay, well, I'll play a few quick battles, and then that gives me an idea of what I'm doing and how to do it. And then when they start the main campaign, they can go, well, I remember this kind of thing worked, so therefore I should start designing my ships that way. That's a really interesting set of DLC. And is there plans to expand additional historical scenarios going forward, or? Or...
Yes, one part of the DLC will be a scenario designer. So, and there is also a ship designer, to a free standalone ship designer, because the ship designer that is in the campaign is of course limited by your current technology and your dock size and things like that. But the ship designer in the DLC will be completely standalone, so that will give the player the possibility of designing any ship from any time with any technology. So they can design historical ships from any age, and they can also make their own scenarios. So I expect that will be popular. There will be probably an explosion in real or hypothetical naval matchups.
Yeah, I can definitely see people finding all the ships that were kind of either should have been refitted or were designed but never built, and quickly, well, not so quickly, but generating them and then saying, hey, look, I've got the G3 or the H39 or things like this. So speaking of the ship designer, which is, to be honest, one of my favorite parts of the game, you can spend, as I'm sure you know, you can spend hours agonizing over exactly how you're going to design your next cruiser, especially in the context of the campaign where you might be thinking, well, ideally I want this, but I need cruisers now. My technology level only allows me to do this, which is again realistic to the time. How difficult was it to actually program that? Because there's a huge number of factors that go into that ship designer. You've got, you know, your turret types, the location of your primary battery, the secondary battery, tertiary battery, which also then becomes AA in Rule the Waves 3 later down in the campaign. Torpedo defenses, armor layouts. You've got, you know, and it's not just a case of, well, I have X amount of armor. There's armor thicknesses for all sorts of parts of systems and subsystems and different types of fire control. So how hard was it to come up with that ship designer in the first place and stop it doing kind of weird, runaway, unexpected things?
That was a major challenge, and it is a cornerstone of the campaign. And ship design is an incredibly complex subject. So I wouldn't claim that the ship designer in Rule the Waves isn't even close to a professional ship designer that a real naval architect would do, but it does a fair job of simulating just about any warship between 1890 and 1970. So it was part research. I had to put in empirically horsepower curves. I had to check a large number of ships and see they have this many horsepower on that displacement and they made this speed. And it's different for battleships and cruisers because cruisers have, you know, a slimmer hull form. So there was a lot of empirical research and trial and error until I got it to work. And also, of course, I read up on the subject. But I would be the first one to admit that it does a decent job, but it's not a professional tool for ship design.
Yeah, well, I suppose at that point, you know, if you were going to professionally design each ship, when we see how long it took to design the ships in real life, you're talking a year or two if they're being quick.
Yes.
And as much as people might love a game, they're not going to spend a year or two designing every single ship.
No, I actually saw your video on the mold loft.
Yeah, that's a fun place. There's actually a surviving mold loft in Chatham that can be visited, but it's the process of constructing ships and designing them is, you know, I mean, there's a reason you have a naval architects as a distinct feature aside from the people who go out and command the ships at sea. For most of the time, very different skill set. So when we're talking about Rule the Waves 3, so obviously we've had 1, 2, and 3 now. Are there sort of tentative plans for a Rule the Waves 4 at some point, or is it kind of 3 is it for now with DLC expansions?
Well, Rule the Waves 4 might be spaceships. You know. I would like to do something on you know, David Weber and the Honor Harrington series. But I think that's not realistic. But as kind of a thought, the thought has struck me. But it would be a very big leap. But another thing that I'm thinking of, and no promises now, but I'm thinking one game I did many years ago was called Steam and Iron, and that had historical campaigns of the North Sea and the Baltic and the Adriatic in World War One. So that's a possibility to possibly do an extension of the DLC, so to speak, with historical campaigns. That is probably the most realistic idea, but it's very tentative now. So no promises.
No, fair enough. It's I've followed the arc of the Rule the Waves series since I came across the first one years ago. I suppose a similar thing would be about going not necessarily back to the Age of Sail, because that's a whole different kettle of fish, but has there ever been any thoughts about maybe doing the 1860 to 1890 period, the sort of true ironclads, up to the point where the Rule the Wave series picks up with pre-dreadnoughts?
I guess it would be possible to at least to make the historical battles, but to do a campaign is more difficult, I think, because the rate of technological change is, well, it's not only rapid, it's also a bit lopsided. You have Monitor and Virginia engaging wooden ships of the line, or at least frigates, wooden warships. So I think that would be a bit tricky. And also those ships were slow. I mean, the player would sit waiting for 5 minutes while the ship makes a circle. And that's the same with Age of Sail, actually. It took like 10, 15 minutes sometimes to just turn 180 degrees.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I was just thinking while you were saying that, the rate of progress from pre-dreadnought to super dreadnought is quite quick. I mean, the game, if you exclude the missile period, just looking at the gunships, you're talking about 40, 50 years, and ships have gone up in mass or displacement by 5, 6, 7 times. Everything's changed technologically. And relatively speaking, in naval history, that's actually it's not slow, because slow would be the Age of Sail, technologically wise, but it's slower than the ironclad period. And I mean, when the AI generates its own ship designs, I suppose you've had enough challenges trying to persuade it to be sensible, when the basic premise is the hull goes about this speed and these are roughly the guns you want to use. Whereas, if you were doing 1870, it would be, do you want a turret ship, a broadside ship, a central battery ship? Do you want lots of small guns, big guns, muzzle loaders?
Rifle guns, muzzle loaders, I mean, there are all kinds of...
Do you go Italian and just abandon armour completely, and how do you model that? So I suppose it makes sense that that's actually perhaps even more challenging.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier that when you designed the first game, that this was kind of the game that you wanted to play. When you did Rule the Waves 1, were there things that you had to leave out of that because of either limitations of technology or time, that you were looking at going, I really want to put those in, but I can't now, and maybe they came in 2? Or was 2 more a case of, actually, I like this, and now I'm going to try and think of ways of just doing more stuff?
No, the basic game or the legacy game from Rule the Waves 1 has been continually improved. So there are some things that I didn't do in Rule the Waves 1 that I realized I really wanted there. But then the game design is also always a case of not doing things. You have to limit yourself, because you can go down into every rabbit hole and do every kind of detailed thing, and then you will never get a working game. So you can't have everything in the game, even if you want to.
Yeah, which is fair enough. Yeah, because otherwise, with games at that point, you'd be down designing the fine details of every gun and torpedo and everything. And then, then we come back to Rule the Waves 3 and its DLC. Are there any features in Rule the Waves 3 that either that you'd like to change or that you want to add to at the moment, or is it a kind of thing of we're looking at the scenarios and that's probably about it?
There has been a number of minor changes to the basic game model, and those will be released as a free update, even for those who do not buy the DLC. So there are a number of improvements to the base game that will be released as well, and are actually already are in the form of a public beta.
Okay.
So there have been continual minor improvements, but as always, it's a case of choosing what you have time to do. And I mean, you want to release the game sometime. You could work on the perfect game forever.
Yeah. So I guess to sort of start wrapping this up, where can people find the game?
It's available on Steam or from Matrix Games.
And once they've started downloading and playing it, is there a way that they can submit feedback if they want to suggest improvements and things like that?
Oh yes, we have forums both on Matrix Games and Naval Warfare Simulations. Have our own forum, so there are several ways that people can suggest improvements. And in fact, much player feedback has been very useful to me, because that suggests what players want, and sometimes people have good ideas that I haven't thought of myself. So I find player feedback is very valuable for me as a designer. I don't have time to read everything, but I really do appreciate the feedback. Okay,
cool, excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you do have to get back home. So, ladies and gentlemen, Fredrik Wall, designer of the Rule the Waves game series, all around excellent gentleman and very interesting presenter at the conference. So look out for the conference that presentation that he gave, which will be coming up on the channel at some point in the future. And if you'd like to purchase the Rule the Waves games for yourselves, there will be links in the video description down below where you can pick it up. And who knows, we might even have a Rule the Waves design competition at some point in the future, now that we know that there's a ship designer coming. That'll be really fun. And once again, thank you very much for your time. And hopefully people will continue to enjoy the games for a long time to come.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.